Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
Wes.
Stonemeyer's worst game ever?
Liar!
Liar!
Lying is wrong.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.
Pendulum is a real-time worker placement game, but to be honest, the real-time aspect is not, like, I almost shouldn't have said it that way. Like, it rolls off the tongue to say it's a real-time worker placement game.
That's the elevator pitch for the game.
Yeah, but it would be better to say it's a worker placement game with a real-time aspect, right?
Yeah, because the whole game is played in real time. There is no, like...
There's no turns.
Well, there are rounds, so I guess there is a... All right, pause, kind of make sure that you're, you discard some resources,
but it's not my turn, or your turn is 30 seconds, or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and there's not even that much that happens between that reset, other than you score some things.
Right.
Like, it's not like you pick up your whole hand or anything. It's just you clear the board. The really crazy thing about the game, though, is that it's not just like everything happens simultaneously. It's that there are 3 different timers working simultaneously. So there's 3 sections of the board, and each section has its own timer. So this section of the board is playing on a different time than this section of the board is playing on a different time than this section of the board is playing.
But really what that means is this has a 3-minute time. There's the 3 sections you just talked about, each have 2 rows. Each row is actually identical. You can only place a worker in a row that does not have a timer, but you only activate that worker in a row that does have a timer. So if I place, give me a worker.
You have workers right in front of you.
Oh, Jesus. So if I place a worker into this space right here, I have to wait until this timer is done and gets flipped over to the row that I just placed the worker in order to activate it. You push it down. Sometimes you have to spend something, but then you gain the resources or advance on tracks or whatever it is you get from that spot. But then I can't move this worker. I can't do anything with this worker until this timer flips again. Now there's 45 seconds, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. So the 45-second one is going to go back and forth a decent amount throughout the round, right? And people are going to trigger things over here a whole bunch. But those are like the weaker actions. 2 minutes is a little bit stronger, and 3 minutes is like the strongest actions that you won't get to do as often as the other ones.
So maybe thinking, so you just go back and forth in these quick areas, and then right before the big timer flips, you want to try to get some guys over there really quick. Because you can use a worker like 2 or 3 times in here and then move them over here before that timer flips. However, there is some worker blocking, like the big workers and the little workers. If there's a big worker there, the little workers don't want to get involved, especially over here. So you do, like, there may be a time you're like, I definitely need this flag to trigger or this track to go up. So I'm going to lock this worker in over here for like 2 minutes of the game. He's just going to sit there doing nothing because I really need to make sure that I can get that. And he may not even be completely locked in here because I may decide really quick, ooh, I do need to pull this guy over here to trigger that. And as long as he's not bound up by the timers in his section he can't move, I can then put him back over there. Or you're not locked into the place by just going there. You're only locked in by that timer flipping.
With that idea of like, oh, this guy's locked up, I can't move this guy until this timer moves. It is a real-time game, but there's a lot of go, 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 and then wait for the timer to be done. Like, it does kind of work that way. There's like real time, there's like bursts of like, I want to get this over here and this over there. Okay, cool. The fact that this is 45 seconds though, you do really feel like you want to utilize that. You want to, when this flips, you really want to get in on this as much as you can, right? Assuming that's part of your strategy. But like, I mean, getting an extra vote or getting some more gold or getting some more of these little things to tuck into your flag they're always good. You want to do that. So you do feel a decent amount of pressure as the game goes on. So you're like, wait, I have to make sure that I'm being as efficient as I can within this 45-second window. But now we keep talking about all the stuff that you can gain, but what do? The whole point of the game is to advance on these 3 different tracks.
Oh, 4 different tracks, but one track is only one space.
Right.
So yeah, there is a lot of gathering resources, getting things, like kind of building up your board a little bit to make the flags better actions, to get you more resources, to get more things. But again, the tracks are where you really want to be, which there's a little bit of the tracks up in the green section, but the only place to get blue is over in this purple section, which takes a long time. And that's really where like your really powerful actions are happening. And you can have some like power moves where like I have 3 or 4 guys over there, the timer hits, I just move everything down and just get a ton of stuff. but then those guys are all locked up for the next 3 minutes of the game. So I might just be like, well, I'm just hanging out. But because of those things, there are some really, like, there's a few really intense moments of the game where you're, like, watching these timers go off because you're like, I need the 45-second timer to flip, so that I can move my guy to the purple section before the purple timer gets down and Tom flips that timer. So I'm waiting to try to, like, flip the timer, move my guy, and at the same time Tom is watching that timer like a hawk, seeing me watching this one, being like, there's no way you're getting that motherfucker.
There are a decent amount of different things to go for, right? Like I said, in order to win the game, you really want to advance on these different tracks, but you also want to think about, like Wes said, you want to tuck more cards under your flag areas, because, you know, whatever is written on that part of your player board under the flag area, that's what you're going to trigger. So I could trigger just this one thing, or I could tuck other cards into there, and when I trigger this flag, I get all this extra stuff. There's the votes that you want to get for, not really, it is kind of like turn order, I guess, but it's really like a prestige thing so that you can get to advance up more in the tracks and be the first to draw some more cards into your hand, either instant cards or cards into your hand for next round, because you can always play these cards at any time, but then how do you pick them back up? Oh, do I even want to spend the resources to pick them back up, or do I want to spend those resources, you know, to do other stuff? Like, there's a lot. It's not just, you know, a race to move up those tracks. I mean, it is, but there's so many different ways to do it, because I also didn't talk about this card in the middle here. I don't remember what it's called, but once I have the resources depicted on that card, I can either get this token, which you need to win. That's that track that's just one space, or you can get more resources down here. Like, there's a decent amount of different avenues to try and take each round.
There's also a good amount of advancing on the tracks, even in these, like, flag upgrades. So when you're upgrading your personal board, so that when you activate the flags over here, you're moving up on the tracks that typically you can only move up over in the advanced section. So even though we are all going for the same thing, we want to advance the tracks, there are a lot of different ways you can kind of go about executing that strategy.
And also, so we keep talking about upgrading that little tableau thing. I mean, you can only ever keep 2 by the end of the round. There's actually there are some special abilities that will let you keep more. But there are also variability between the different players. Like, the player mats are slightly variable in the normal version, and then there's an upgraded side that gives you, like, I don't want to say special player powers, but it's just variance. Like, it's not like you have this special ability that other people don't, per se. It's more the cards you have in your hand are different, and the flag areas you have are different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They just shuffled things around on your board a bit more so that your experience is going to be different. It's not an extra ability you have to remember, oh yeah, that's right, I can always get an extra green all the time, no matter, there's no green, an extra yellow all the time, no matter what, right? It's not something like that you have to constantly remember that you have that extra ability, you know what I mean?
You can also, there is a way to play this game without using the actual timers. There's like a round track of, like, activate this section and then activate these sections and then activate all the sections, which I haven't actually played. I don't know, you said you played it.
It is totally fine for your very first round to teach people the game, but even before you get through this whole thing, you will get the game. Mostly. Like, you'll be like, okay, so we're all going to flip here, and then we're going to put all our workers here. Okay, does everybody have the workers where they want? Okay, now this is going to flip, so you can activate these guys, right? So they don't move yet. Okay, cool, so we're all good. All right, now this is going to flip, so we activate over here. Okay, cool, and then we flip here, which reactivates these. We all get it? And by the time you're done with the amount that I just said to do, everyone goes, okay, I understand the game. I know we haven't talked a lot about opinions of the game yet. I do have some complaints that actually are component-wise. The timers are a big part of the game, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes ours are locking up a bit, like you flip them over and the sand doesn't really run through. I do think Jamie brought up that was like a bit of a known issue, and I think he got with the manufacturer or something and got that remedied. I'm not 100% certain, but I think I heard something about that. But also, it is hard to, like, see sometimes.
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't block up, you'll flip it and you'll start getting nervous. Like, is it running? Is the sand running through there? You know, and people will stop and all, like, stare for a second, be like, oh, I can't see it from my angle, but I can see it from my angle.
Yeah.
You know, and also, I don't know why the idea was to make this, convex? Because it's so much more prone to falling over. If this was flatter and wider.
It's prettier.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of, like, form over function.
Yeah, especially because you go to flip it and like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I will say with the timers, one of my, it's not really a complaint, but something to watch out for, is that the purple timer is what tracks the rounds.
Right.
And there are these tokens on the board, and when you flip the purple timer, all the other timers just flip back and forth. They have a spot here and a spot here. The purple one, you flip into a spot and knock the little token out of that spot. And then you flip it back and knock the token out of that spot. When you flip back, you knock the token out of this spot. In a real-time game where you're like scrambling to get things done, I personally struggled with making sure that I flipped the timer and move the token out of the way so we could keep track of which round we were on.
But I do think that's a bit more of like a you problem.
It may have been.
It's like a your personality type of problem, because when you're in a real-time game, you are so right now, every millisecond counts.
That's what real-time games are.
But, like, you know, it's not that big of a deal for somebody to pick it up and push it over and put it down. But for you, you're just like, oh, I have to flip the timer? Okay, it's flipped. You know what I mean? And granted, that could be a problem for other people out there who fit into the category of Wesley's personality type of playing these types of games. But I don't think that's for everybody to worry about. My overall thoughts on the gameplay is that it's actually pretty good. Like, it's not great. I didn't love it. It's not viticulture, you know? Oh,
yeah, it's definitely not viticulture. I would say saying it's not great, I wouldn't say that. I thought it was a really fun game. They executed real time so well in a competitive style game where you are fighting over things. Like, there are some games that, like, if like everyone does things simultaneously because they don't really affect each other. Like, this is like, no, what we're doing is like competing for spots, and we're all trying to scramble to get our things on the board first, where we want them. Like, I thought they executed that really, really well.
It is really tight also, like thinking like, man, I don't know if 4 rounds is enough to get to the end of some of these tracks, and then you skirch over the edge there towards the end if you're playing efficiently. But I think just the real-time aspect is gonna just be a no for some people. Like 20 to 25% are probably not gonna like the real-time aspect, which means in a 4 or 5 player game there's a high probability there's gonna be at least one player who's just like,
what are you basing these statistics on? Like, can you cite your research?
Guesstimation?
There are definitely people and personality types that don't go for real-time games. Now, with that said, with the real-time, there are some points where you're just like, all right, now we're waiting. Like, there's 15 seconds left on that timer. And in a game, or especially for me, where I play this game and I'm like, gotta go. That now I'm like, nothing's happening.
Yeah, again, I think that's going to be a downer for some people. Like, think about like pandemic rapid response.
Yeah.
Right? The way that works is any downtime is just setting up for when we're going to put the timers again, and then we just like, and go, and then we can start playing.
While the timers are running, things don't stop until the timers stop. This is, you're literally waiting for the timer to count down.
Right. And it does feel like, you know, sometimes the people who are really fast are just doing better. You know, if you need to stop and think about some things, it's not guaranteed to hinder you, but it might. You know what I mean?
There are definitely points in the game where you're thinking and somebody like swoops in underneath you and like, ooh, should I go here or there? And then somebody else goes there and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to go there. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Just say it's his worst game ever. Like,
well, I was honestly just so surprised at how many people how much like, I don't want to say negative response, but yeah, just like lukewarm response. Again, I think it's because of that real-time aspect. They're reading the description, they see real-time, and they just go, But now, I liked it, but I maybe didn't like it as much as you, just because I think about it compared to the other Stonemaier games. I'm just like, you know, it's no Scythe, it's no Viticulture, it's even no Euphoria. I mean, I maybe like it about as much as I like Euphoria, because I loved Euphoria when we first played it, but then we played Viticulture afterwards, and then I played Scythe afterwards, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, maybe not as much.
And I think that part of what it has is like, you're measuring it against Stonemaier games. If this was like a company, like a Kickstarter, it was their first game ever, I'd be like, nice, I want to see what else these guys can do.
True, but I mean, these things don't exist in a vacuum.
No, but also you're comparing it to Stonemaier.
You're comparing it to a publisher that has had hits after hit after hit.
Even though we,
you know what I mean?
We like Wingspan wasn't a huge hit for us. The hype that game has, people that were like, Wingspan's amazing. What else does this guy do?
It's like the Marvel movies, you know? It's like, you know,
they're all terrible.
It's like Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, all these great movies. Then you're like, well,
Ant-Man.
Captain Marvel. You know? Well, actually, that's a bad example, because Captain Marvel and Thor the Dark World are just unrewatchable at this point.
Getting weird now.
If this did exist in a vacuum, I would probably like it a bit more. I mean, again, I do think it's unique. I think, there's multiple paths to victory, lots of strategies. Like, it's overall fun. I do think the replayability is, try out the different player powers. Honestly, I didn't really feel that brought that much value. It was cool and it's different, but, like, the game's gonna kind of fall into similar experiences the more you play it. You know what I mean? The more you play it, the more you get used to it, the more similar it's not going to be the exact same. You're going to have you're going to try different routes, but you're going to go with like the routes you like. Like for me in Mystic Vale, like I just hate getting a really big card that you only see one every 20 cards, or I hate being risky and like getting a lot of those spoils in my deck. Like I always go for those green trees in my deck, and I always go to play such that I can draw my whole deck or something like that. Like I just find a strategy that just gels with your personality.
It's like in Magic, I always want to play a green-black deck.
Right.
Like I always build green-black decks. Occasionally I want to build a black and white deck.
Right. And I feel like that's just like if you play this game enough, you're going to just find your groove, and that's probably the type of strategy you're going to try and take. And even that you can have variations on. It's not I always do this turn 2 and this turn 1, turn 1, turn 2. You know how numbers go.
But with that, I think that means that there's going to be a niche of people that love this game.
True.
There's going to be a large amount of people that enjoy this game, and there's going to be those people that just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think when you play a 5-player game, I think unless they know ahead of time that this is like this is their thing, but I think just taking a random sample of 5 people to sit down and play this game, I think you're going to get at least one person who's just like, this is not my thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, but if it is your thing, we're going to have a purchase link in the description box down below where you can get yourself a copy of it.
Also in that description box down below, you may have noticed, wow, that's a super cool, awesome table you got there. It must be like $1 million. No, it's a game topper. Yoko's right on top of your existing table. Description box down below. I'm not talking about it anymore.
Either way, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
That took way longer than I thought.
Way too long.
Why the f*** you lying? Why you